So what we're going to start with is a little bit of integration. And I always like to kick it off with my friend Klaus Isler. You probably haven't had Klaus in any, you've had a Talbot professor maybe already, but probably not Klaus. Have you read any books by Klaus? Oh, he's a great guy. He's really a great guy, and he loves integration of faith. And why is integration of faith so important to us? Well, it's important to us because it's important to the Lord. Why is it important to the Lord? And you may have read this in some of Klaus's dissertations, but I've used it and it just has hit me to really understand that. Because, you know, John the Baptist was born to Elizabeth and Zachariah, isn't that correct? Into what kind of a home? A priestly home. That Zachariah was a priest, right? So God placed him there for a reason, because he had this priestly ministry all set up for John the Baptist. But then comes along Jesus. What kind of home did God place Jesus in? Yeah, a workplace home, right? So it tells you a little bit about Jesus' ministry starting around 12 years old, and he's working with his dad in the carpenter shop. He learned about accounts receivable, accounts payable, ordering wood, setting the pricing, making his margins. So right away, Jesus learned about integration of faith in the marketplace. So if it's good enough for Jesus in the marketplace, it's good enough for me. So that's why we're here, just to visit a little bit about that. You know, I left my Bible down there. Did anybody bring a Bible tonight? Or I know you brought your phones. I got it on my phone. Look up Matthew 14, 22 to 24, I believe it is, and I believe it's Matthew. So we'll wait and see when you get there. Matthew 14. It could be Luke, but let's try Matthew. Yeah. 22 is it walking on water?
Yes.
Okay.
22 to 24?
Yeah, just I don't want the whole thing, but I mean 22 to 24 would be good.
Okay. Immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night he was there alone. The boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. When they saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said, and cried out in fear. Jesus said to them, "Take courage, it is I, don't be afraid." Keep going.
Keep going.
"Lord, if it is you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. And Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" Keep going.
Nope, that's good. Thank you. You know, I love this as a business verse. And you probably say, well, how do you get a business verse out of that? Because, you know, the business world is a challenge. And I found it a challenge for 35 years. But I really found out by looking at this verse, if you don't get out of the boat, you can't walk on water. And you can stay in the boat with all the rest of those characters that didn't have the courage to take the risk that Peter had, and you can stay in that boat the rest of your life. We just talked about Joaquin's mentor who started and taken a couple of companies public and probably has figured out, boy, if I would have taken that risk, I never would have made it. Well, a lot of us have started businesses, really have thought about the same thing. But if you really want to think about it, you will never walk on water unless you get out of the boat. So he gets out of the boat, and what happens to us in the business world? Everything's going fine because our eyes are on Jesus. And God is right elbow to elbow, but all of a sudden what happens to us often in the business world? We run into the storm. We take our eyes off Jesus. We look at ourselves, our self-centered self. By the way, self-centered, I want you to keep this in mind, is having a huge ego. And ego is edging God out. That's what EGO stands for, edging God out. And that's what happens when you take your eyes off of Jesus and believe you can do it yourself. And when he looked down, he's calling on Jesus' help. Now, I will tell you, in all my business career, it happened to me all the time. I had God in the bullpen. I was doing fine till about the 6th or 7th inning, and all of a sudden, oh, Lord, come in and save me. I've made some of these humanistic, poor decisions, and I really need to be bailed out. And that happens. But here's a business principle that you need to think about as they walked back, or they walked on the water back to the boat. Jesus stopped them before he got to the boat, and he said, what? Can you remember that verse?
You of little faith.
That's right. But the reprimand was in private. You always reprimand in private and praise in public if you're in a business. And that's what he did. So I think it's a great business model for us to say, really, if you're going to get out there and you want to make something of yourself, you got to get out of the boat to be able to walk on the water. You better keep your eyes on Jesus, but you're going to have the rough road. You're going to look down. Jesus is going to pick you up. Get the eyes back on Jesus. But on the other side, what a witness to the others that were in the boat. So, that's one of the key things I want to leave with, because Peter showed he was a risk taker. He certainly showed leadership. He was the one that bounced up to ask the Lord to do that. But more importantly, he trusted. Jesus said, come, and he trusted him, and he walked out there. So that's what I believe. We're put in leadership roles, whatever that is, in your family, in a business, in a community, in a classroom. The Lord puts us in leadership roles. But we need to trust God that you're in that role for a reason. And that reason is to be obedient, and at the same time, trust him that you're going to take risk. Now, one of the things that's asked me often is, what were the pillars that really provided guidance when you had to make a lot of decisions in the workplace, a secular workplace that you had a lot of responsibility to stockholders, fiduciary responsibility to the board of directors and to stockholders, and boy, you get tugged a lot. Well, let me just, did you bring your, let me do it this way. Maybe it's easier for all of you to see if I could write it bold on the board. The reason I'm going to do this now, because I just preempted one of your questions. Every single class that I get into asks that question. How does a Christian stay upright in a secular marketplace? Well, I look at it this way. I want to give you some terms up here, and then we're going to talk about them. Think. Values. Choices. Character. Basically, you want to drive to a spot that your character has strength within your decision-making process. And to do that, all of you, when you came in for an interview, we talked about this verse. Anybody know the verse we talked to every time you came for an interview? Micah 6:8, that's it. Micah 6:8 drives the character component. That's why we talk about it. Micah 6:8, Joseph, God requires 3 components in character in that verse. Do you remember them? You guys got to tattoo this thing in your computers. Anybody want to? Okay, let's start. Let's start. The first one is what? All right. Well, we're gonna make it simple. We're gonna say integrity. If I misspell anything, Larry, you let me know, because that's not my strong suit. I didn't take your English class. Integrity. What did you say? Love, mercy, which I call kindness. What's the last one, Brian? Humbly. Humility. That's where, if you build yourself on those 3 value systems right there, integrity, kindness, and humility, then you're going to get through just about anything, any of those storms out there. Now, based on that, somebody look up 1 Corinthians 15:58. 1 Corinthians 15:58. That's the other one. I'm going to give you these, by the way. So I'm going to give you my top 7 business verses. Anybody gets it, just read it off to me.
Therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm. Let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain.
Did everybody get that? 1 Corinthians 15:58. Everybody get that? I think it said steadfast, right? And it said immovable. And toil for the work of the Lord. This is where you want to be out there, because this is where you can get weak-kneed, that you're not standing firm, you're not in this Christian environment that you're in the MBA class, you're not sitting there working for Biola, and this is where you get challenged, and you want to be immovable, and you want to always think of toiling for the work of the Lord. So how do we get over there? It's what you think that drives the process. What encompasses all of this is your heart. So, if the heart drives what you think, your think tank is going to drive your value system. Right here is where you are defined. What's your value system? Because that's going to carry all the way over to character. So your value system in any organization, now you're going to get, by the way, some Tabor truisms tonight. These things are really worth a lot. So if I say this is a truism, you want to get it down. This is a truism. Values drive behavior. That happens in any kind of organization, family to church, to university to business. But values drive behavior. And action, what you do, reflects your value system. You know, it's interesting. It's not how you act in a situation of business or at home that people judge you on because you're a Christian. What do you think they judge you on? It's not how you act. It's how you react. If you went in and said, I'm not making enough money to your boss said, that's tough, you're not going to make any more, and then you get really upset. A Christian is judged on how they react to diversity, not how they act. You can plan your action all night to be able to go in tomorrow and ask for that raise, but you can't plan the reaction. So it's an act-react situation. So once you get here, and once all this, then it brings you to choices. Goes back to the Garden of Eden. Want to eat the fruit? Don't eat the fruit. Whatever. But this value system drives you into your personal choices in the business world or whatever. That's the integration piece. You make some good and some bad. But when you do it, it helps develop your character that may be in opposition to Micah 6:8, but it may run right in sync with it. Some of the undergrads I talk to, I say on Sunday night, before you tackle the week, take a little piece of paper out, sit there on a 1 to 10 scale and judge yourself on integrity, kindness, and humility for the week before. Now they think that's pretty simple because they're going to be all 10s, except a couple have come by my office and said, I was a 4 in kindness, and I was a 5 in humility. So the point being is, sometimes you want to test yourself. And then you get in the workplace and you put all this in motion, and then this is where you stand. Okay? Any questions on that? I know there's not a lot of theology in that, but it all starts the way you think. And it all starts in your heart. And then it moves right across, and that's the kind of person you're going to be in the organization.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Because I think we might all deal with this. How do you handle when maybe the character or the values of your organization are in complete contrast to what your character and your values are, when those two are different?
Well, see, that's an excellent question, because I always say to any of you, you need to vet the organization's mission statement thoroughly before you work for the company, because they're not changing. They're the same thing they were 10 years ago or 5 years ago. You're moving into that knowing that if you vetted them, you know what you're getting into. Doesn't mean you shouldn't work there. I'm just saying it shouldn't be a surprise. Now, the Lord's placed you there for some kind of reason. And that reason is to be some kind of change agent and how you influence. And that's what I'm saying. The ultimate deal in all this is to become a change agent and influencer. Now, so how do you deal with it? Well, listen, if it is on the unethical piece, this piece right here, lack of integrity, you need to deal with that one. But if not, they're not real kind to you and you're not. But the point is how you deal with adversity within that department. People are watching you. And so you can be a model. But that's not an easy answer, because I've seen it. I've seen companies really turn and churn because they're looking for bottom line and they're changing management. They go from servant leadership, and that's a whole nother thing I would talk to you for hours on. Servant leadership, they stay in an autocratic base and drive it down. And those kind of organizations are really struggling right now because people aren't willing to have it driven down. That answer? Pretty good? You know, it's interesting. I don't know, you guys know, I spent a career at Coca-Cola. Well, almost a career. One of my careers. But Asa Candler, back in the late 1800s, was the first president and owner of the Coca-Cola company. And I didn't know this when I was working for Coca-Cola, and I had this article now for several years, and it's really in bad shape, and I'm going to read you something about Coca-Cola's international growth. Remember, this is way back at the turn of that century, was the result of a desire by Asa and his brother Warren to evangelize the world and support missionaries. So he was using Coca-Cola as the input to get into Cuba and all these places to be a missionary. Christianity was the central purpose of Asa Candler's life. He had a profound reverence for his Creator, an abiding faith in the revealed Word of God, a complete reliance on the blood of Jesus, and an unabound love for his fellow man. He was a devout, consecrated, and practicing Christian. So back in 1891, this is what he built the Coca-Cola company on with $25,000. Asa believed that the faith in the soul raises the productive force of any life to its highest power. It quickens intellectual faculties, arouses industry, and inspires inventiveness. Asa's vision was to combine evangelism and humanitarian aid, and he did that through the vehicle of Coca-Cola. The article is quite interesting, but I just wanted to show you integration of faith, 1891, was still being processed out there. And I think that's critical. Now, saying that, and you ask those questions, we'll go through a couple of my Coca-Cola stories about the integration of faith. My background in Coke was my grandfather started in Kern County in 1920, little tiny old place about as big as this room. He and my grandmother ran this thing. He bottled in the morning, took the truck out at night. Now, what was so interesting about it, he said, well, man, to have a Coca-Cola franchise ought to be great. Well, yeah, but in those days it wasn't, because nobody knew what Coca-Cola was. He had orange drinks, and he had grape, he had Delaware Punch, but he couldn't get anybody to buy Coke because they didn't know what it was. And he didn't have an advertising budget. So he decided, here's your first marketing challenge. How do you get to sell Coca-Cola when nobody wants it? Well, he slipped 2 bottles, and there was the little 6.5 ounce bottles, on the top of the orange case. So when you bought 24 bottles of orange, you got 2 of these bottles free. Next time they called in their order, they said, we'd like 4 bottles of that brown stuff, whatever it's called. So he was selling brown stuff for about a year. And that's what the people termed it. So now it got to a half a case of orange and a half a case of brown stuff. And in about 3 years, he was all brown stuff. So he got rid of the orange, he got rid of the Delaware Punch, and he was only selling Coca-Cola. That's how he built that franchise. And that was back in 1920 to 25. So I grew up in a Coca-Cola business. In fact, I tell people I didn't know what milk was till I was 13. I mean, we had 6.5 ounce Coke for every meal. And sorry, Larry, you've heard all this stuff before. But anyway, but the issue was, it showed me right then, innovative marketing. You don't have money for any advertising, and you just have to use your noodle. So he was investing the cost of those brown stuffs to build a network. So I worked in that with my dad for years, and we sold our business to Los Angeles back in 1975, and I came to work in LA and ran an institutional business. Now that institutional business was very interesting. We served all the McDonald's, and you see the dispensers down there, and the Talon, those kind of things. So through that process, then I ran sales and marketing for the company for a while, and then was asked by our chairman of the board to meet him for dinner one night. He wanted to know if I'd start running the company on Monday. Now, I don't know how old some of you are, but I was 39 and not even 40 yet, just going to turn 40. And I couldn't believe he's asking me to run a 3,200 employee company with $850 million in sales. I knew that he must have been thinking, gee, I called the wrong guy to dinner. But I knew him well. He was a mentor. By the way, because of him, he was a great mentor to me, got me interested in mentoring. That's why I'm in the mentoring program at Biola. So anyway, I think I've told some of you this story, that went home, my wife said, what did Tom want for dinner? And I said, you won't believe it, he wants me to start running the company. Monday, the West Coast division. And she had a surprising response. Great. Now, not many wives or spouses would say great when they know that the time it's going to take away from the family to run that kind of company. I said, what do you mean great? Because she says, it's got to be the Lord's work, because you're not that good. So, I've been eating that humble pie. See that humility? That's why that's on that board, because I thought I was going to be really something, right? Because, man, but what I found out in this integration of faith situation, that God really didn't care whether I knew how to sell Coca-Cola or not. Because 8 months into that job, a young man came to me and said, hey, can I start a Bible study? I understand you're a Christian. Can I start a Bible study in this company? Oh my gosh. That wasn't the decision I wanted to make 8 months in the job. I'm trying to drive marketing and sales and production, and we had 20 operating branches. And what did you just say to him? I said to him, I'd like to start a Bible study. Oh man. Now your secular hat comes on real quick. If I make the decision, how many people are going to pound at my door and picket and the whole thing? So who do I call? My chairman of the board, who put me in the position, and I trot up there for my mentoring campaign. I said, Tom, I got a question to you. Somebody down below wants to start a Bible study on Wednesday noons in our marketing conference room. What do you think? And you guys have probably all been in this position. He didn't answer, seemed like 5 minutes, but it's probably 5 seconds. He took his little glasses, put them on the end of his nose, and just looked at me. And I thought, man, am I in trouble for bringing this up? Because he was not a Christian. He said, I put you in that position to make decisions. Thanks for letting me know in case we get a blowback from our stockholders or a board. What else you got on your list? I said, aren't you going to make the decision for me? He said, absolutely not. So I made the decision we'd go ahead and do that. So just short of 4 years, 33 people came to know the Lord. So did God really care about whether I was going to sell Coke or not? And it just hit me there. Hey, big shot, they put you in there at 40 years old and you're going to turn this company, it's really going to get going. And I'm thinking, wow, that wasn't why he put me here. So that faith, I was able to deliver from a standpoint of modeling And how it came about was, I went and worked out at 5 o'clock in the morning down at the Jonathan Club in LA. I got to the plant about 7 every morning. And we had 22 carpools coming in, van pools. And they would dump the employees off, and they'd all go up in the cafeteria. We had a pretty full cafeteria for all kinds of eggs and pancakes and this and that, rolls. But I had my own table that was reserved for me, and anybody could come and sit there. I invited the accounts receivable person and whoever. They'd sit down there. We'd just chat about their, I learned more about our company having coffee for 30 minutes in that cafeteria. But the most interesting thing was the word of mouth on my authorization of the Bible study. Nobody ever criticized it. Not one person, not one employee, not one union guy or anything. So God just shielded that. But more people sat down and said, what is that Bible study? What is going on? Da-da-da-da-da-da. So God regenerated that. They knew we were building this company off of what? Integrity. And that's the key issue that got through. See, secular people understand ethics, integrity. Those are buzzwords that are out there in the walk of life. And so I use the integration of faith molding into that. So that led me to my next event with the Lord. And that was one of our very biggest universities. Decided after 50 or 60 years, we are going to put our business out for bid, and I think we're going to switch to Pepsi. Well, my sales guy comes bolting into my office like a, dog after a bone. Hey, I need your help. I need your help. I said, for what? You got to go with me. They're going to throw us out. They can't change. We've been there 50 years. And we've taken care of. No. There's this really a jerk over there. There's their food service guy. He said, I can't get through to him. I can't get this thing settled. And I want to take you with me. So I go with him to this meeting, which I had to postpone one day. And we walk in, and he's trying to mumble and give me what the problem is. And what do you think the problem is? Now, you're all business marketing people. What do you think the problem is when you're, huh? What?
Yeah.
No. Huh? What? Price. Every time. Every negotiation's on money. Don't ever forget that in this business. Dee Dee, you get a coupon at the end. That was good. Anyway, so the issue in this thing was, we're walking in, but every time I had a sales call in my whole career, I prayed before I went in. Not that he would buy from me, that we would have fellowship and that I would be able to at least express some of my faith to the person without being overbearing. And the second time, also understand his needs. See, remember marketing, we're going to talk about. Marketing is a very simple formula. You got to match a need with a benefit. You know what? If I'm selling earmuffs in California, there's a lot of need here, unless you're going to go up skiing. So you got to match a need with a benefit. So anyway, through this process, I stopped and I prayed. He said, what are you doing? And by the way, he was so far from being a Christian. In fact, I always had to calm down his profanity. And he tried, just how bad his profanity was, I had to question him on it about every 3 minutes. What do you think it was when I wasn't around? And anyway, we walked in. There was a table set for the 2 of us and 3 of the university's people. And the head guy that he didn't like was sitting on the end and said, Mr. Tabor, come down here and sit next to me. I said, thank you. Went and shook his hand and said, thank you for inviting us over. And we get this thing. I look over. You think the Lord's in charge of this sales call? He's got a fish symbol in his suit lapel. I said, thank you, Lord. So I wasn't going to dive into what the issue was because we were going to go in the boardroom and talk about it after this. We're going to have lunch first. So anyway, I said, I'm sorry I had to change yesterday's appointment, which is true, because I was teaching a couple's Bible study. Now, I wouldn't have thrown that out right out of the chute unless I would have seen my blinking light. He said, what are you studying? I said, Book of James. Oh, he said, that's great. My men's study. So we started talking about the Book of James for about 5 or 10 minutes. And then I said, yeah, and my wife did that in her women's, and then she's in the choir. A choir? He said, my wife and I are in a choir. So we talked, what songs they sing? I said, I don't know, I'm not a singer. And I said, but she loves it. Oh, we love it too. So about the 30 minutes of the lunch, I'm trying to say, what's our issue? Can you just give me a little bit of course, I know it's price on something, But the issue, and then I'd start to say, why are we here? Oh, he said, I'll tell you what the next study you ought to do is Galatians. Paul is so great. And we went through this for 30 minutes. So we got to dessert, and I'm saying, boy, I struck out. Now we're going to go in there, and I have no idea what I got to do battle on. So his guy at the end of the table said, everybody finished the dessert? Great. Let's get up and go into the boardroom. And he stands up and said, oh, no, we're not having a meeting. Mr. Tabor and I, we settled everything. And I'm going, yeah, we did. Yeah, we settled everything. What did we settle? He said, we're staying with Coca-Cola. He said, they're a great company, they have a good foundation, and his guy about faints at the end of the table. And my guy's looking at me with his mouth open. And so we shook hands and thank you, and I didn't know the deal until I got back in the car. So anyway, my sales guy says to me, man, he said, what kind of job did you do on him down there? I said, oh, we jumped on him, and it was really an interesting discussion. He says, he said, I didn't say anything. I said, that's your arrogant ego coming out. I wasn't even including you. I was including Jesus was with me. Oh, he said, are you going to talk to me about that? I said, oh, just a little bit. In fact, two things. One is we get back, you're the one that made the sale, not me. If I ever hear that I was in there making a sale, I don't want to be the salesperson for all these accounts. I don't have time. And of course, now they want to see me because I was the one that, of course, went in. He said, well, what kind of deal did you cut? I said, oh, you're going to find out about it as we drive back in 15 minutes back to the plant. He said, good, tell me about it. I said, the one qualification is you don't open your mouth. And this was very tough for this guy. He was a sales guy. And I gave him the whole gospel in 15 minutes going back there. And he started, I said, remember our deal? So we got back and he shook my hand. He said, man, thanks for bailing me out on that. And I said, that was minor to what I shared with you. You need to think about this. So months went by, and he'd come in and say hi to me once in a while because he was on the street all the time. Oh, about 4 or 5 months later, he came back and says, hey, you think I ought to be in that Bible study that's going on? And I said, not really, because these are all Christians that, are probably deep in it here, and he's here. So I got him, one of the fellows, to do some mentoring for him. And he never came to me and said he accepted the Lord when I left the company. But after I left the company, about 6 months, he died of cancer. And I got a belief that this day the Lord took care of his heart, because his heart changed like that when he said he wanted to go to Bible study. So he never made it into the Bible study, but he made it into the discipleship. And I can't believe. So see how now the Lord's saying, so you're a hotshot Coke salesman. Now we've saved a couple more people. Who else are we going to work on? So there's one more story. You ready for one more story? And then we'll get to real meat. But this is why integration is important in hearing it. Well, we had 13 labor unions. Can you imagine 13 labor unions that I had to deal with? And because we're on camera tonight, I won't tell you what I think about it. But the issue was 5 of the labor unions represented the whole 13. And you can imagine these characters: Teamsters, longshoremen, warehousemen, bottlers, and one other. So we go into this negotiation. Now, when do you think I get into the negotiation? This has been now a years-long negotiation. We're down to 72 hours, and now I'm called in. Now, what do you think I'm called in for? Dee Dee, you're doing great. Yeah, they didn't want me until that time. So we go in to talk about wage. Now, we were smart enough to know that we gave a cafeteria plan. And a cafeteria plan is basically, we're going to give you a 4.5% increase in your compensation. That includes your medical and your wage and your pension and whatever. But the union, you guys have got to tell us in what proportion. Oh, they hated that. Now, why do you think they hated that? What age do you think the drivers were in this, our Teamster drivers? What ages do you think those guys are hauling those cases? Yeah, probably 19 to 23. So what do you think they're interested in? Money, wages. Our bottlers, some have been there 40 years on those lines, on the bottling lines. What do you think they're interested in? The pensions and welfare and how their medical is going to be taken care of. And so what you have is the great divide. So these guys do not want to handle this. So that's why I'm in the meeting. And I've got my HR guy with me and my attorney with me, both non-Christians, knowing I'm a Christian. We open the meeting. Now, you want to know how to handle things, Jacob? I must have handled the way God wanted, because first of all, I was going to start a bodily riot in this meeting. The guy that opened the meeting spoke 5 minutes, and 4 minutes was in profanity. In fact, I learned new words. It was amazing. And so through this process, I just couldn't stand it. And I wanted to go across and picture this now. I'm not being stereotyped, but just picture 5 sopranos sitting there, all with their stogies out their side, not lit, and talking like that. That's not stereotype, but I'm just telling you that's what they look like. And they wanted to deal with that. Well, they wanted to jump on the bandwagon and get me down first. And of course, they insulted the company and my leadership. It's amazing, I'd already looked it up, 44 children of our union employees, through their dads working in that company, got through college. So it wasn't like we didn't do anything for them. So anyway, to make a long story short, you ever had the wee little voice of God? I never had it in my life until that moment. And God said, turn and flee. And of course, I shook my head and said, that's not what I wanted to hear. I can't turn and flee. We're in 72 hours to a strike. So it came through to me loud and clear. And we had those old briefcases, not like you guys carry with your, and I snapped those things closed. Guy looks up at me. I said, well, you guys clean up your act, get a call me and I'll be back. And my attorney chased me across the parking lot. I said, we can't do that. So the next afternoon, 4 o'clock, we get a call, the union's ready to get back to me. So we went and sat down from 4 o'clock to midnight till almost strike time, 6 swear words. That's it. Now that's a moral victory, because the Lord, locked their jaws. We got everything done we should. They did the allocation on the cafeteria plan. I didn't yield on that, and we got it finalized. So of course, then my chairman of the board wants to know, how'd you get that thing done? I said, I had nothing to do with it, only the Lord. He said, oh, I shouldn't have asked, because he knew that's what I would say. But see how the Lord brings you in that integration of faith when you're in the business. So those are just 3 examples that you never know where the Lord's going to intercede in your heart, in your business. And that's what makes it so exciting to have that foundation you have now. And all of you are in the business world. Brian and I have talked many times. He doesn't know where he's going to be tomorrow. And when he moved down here, he certainly didn't. But the Lord sort of crystallizes that a little bit, right? And just it starts moving in that direction. That's why this mentor program is critical, because these mentors are integrating their faith the same way. They may not be as vocal and have these stories that I have. So anyway, we have sort of walked through that very carefully. And so when I say integration of faith, you take that board, you put it in your heart, you get out there and do it.
We hope you enjoyed this message. Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Learn more at biola.edu.